The Writer's Dossier Podcast is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network.
I'm Jeffrey James Higgins, and this is my Writer's Dossier.
No writers were harmed in the production of this podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dossier Podcast. I'm Jeff Circle, your host here in the Dossier Podcast studio, writer's room, and occasional speakeasy. Today, I'm joined with someone I've been wanting to get to know and have on the show for a while. Jeffrey James Higgins. You know Jeffrey Higgins. You know those covers when you see it. Mr. Higgins, thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. If I'd known we were doing the speakeasy thing, I would have brought a drink. I'm literally for my wife's and my restaurant, Elaine's in Old Town Alexandria. So I have a full bar right below me.
Yes. I could turn the camera. If you're ever in Northwest Ohio, I'll make you something nice. We have a lot of fun here at the Writer's Dossier Podcast. You know, watch or listen to the show. We're all over the place, and I can't wait to get your physical dossier to put up on the website. We're going to put the link to the show on your dossier page at the Writer's Dossier. But I wanted to take a few minutes today to talk to you about some really cool stuff that you're doing and share my respect for what you've done in the past with your law enforcement experience, supervisory special agent with the DEA, and you've done a lot of stuff. And we were just talking about the DA office at Bagram. I used to walk past it all the time, and you stood that place up. So thanks for everything you've done, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Yeah, I was really fortunate. I had one of those careers where, I just kind of fell into some things, and I just had some really unique opportunities. I worked, as a cop. I started as a private investigator. I was a journalist. Like I'm a writer now, full-time writer, and I run this literary salon, and I'm a manager of our restaurant. But I always wanted to be a writer. And then I took a job as a private investigator. So, I was a big Robert Parker fan when I was younger, and I got exposed to like different people who want to go into law enforcement. And it kind of stuck with me a little bit. And while I was waiting for another reporter position to open up, I just kept doing these PI things, and it turned into I worked for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Tampa, Florida, and that was a cool job. I was in patrol for a couple years. I was in street crimes, did a lot of undercover. I was on there. We had like an entry team. We were doing multiple entries a week. It was just really interesting stuff. And I left there as a narcotics detective and went to DEA. And I was in New York, and I worked in like the division doing big racketeering cases, and just really kind of fun stuff. And then I joined the New York Drug Enforcement Task Force, which was NYPD and the New York State Police and DEA together in Manhattan. And man, those guys were so much fun. It was a really good time. And then on 9/11, I was in New York, and when the planes hit those towers, a bunch of us just went down there. And so it was myself, Suffolk County DA investigator, and then NYPD patrol officer, a female officer. The three of us were the first people to get to that North Tower after it came down. And I remember standing in that rubble. We were carrying bodies and rendering aid to people when we could. And it was a mess. And I just swore from that point on, I was going to, whatever skills I had as an investigator, I was going to target terrorism. And then it took me a couple, I was temporarily assigned to the JTTF for a little bit with the Pent bomb investigation, directly after, when trying to investigate the attacks themselves. And then I volunteered for a bunch of positions trying to get something that would get me overseas. And I kept coming in second or third, I wouldn't get anything. And so I guess I failed up, because then we decided to open an office in Afghanistan. And I was probably the only other guy. It was myself and John O'Rourke, the country attaché. I was the assistant country attaché. We were probably the only two guys who put in for it, but we got it. So I was able to go to Afghanistan and help get that office stood up with a bunch of temporary agents who came from around the country. And then I ended up, I was acting country attaché for a while, and then we started our FAST teams, which are our foreign advisory support teams, and they were basically our international tactical team. So I was the first group with them, and I did that for about 5 years. And then I transferred to our Special Operations Division, and I did I was in the narco-terrorism group. And so, it was kind of this progression of going from doing international, transnational criminal groups in New York and focusing on hit crews and that type of thing. And then it led into my entire career after that was terrorism. So it was a great career. I feel honored to have worked with the people I did. Worked with the military. I was in combat with the SEALs. I was co-located with Special Forces for years overseas. And I just met so many really terrific people. Worked with all the alphabet agencies. Got to brief a couple of drug czars and ambassadors and generals, and so it was a good opportunity. And I felt like we actually did some good there. I was talking to my wife about it the other day. I was just like, I was working 20 hours a day. I was much younger then, though, so it's a little more painful now. But but it was like there were lives at stake. When you're in those environments, and right, when you're in those environments, if you're not giving it 100%, what else could you have done to prevent an attack?
Yeah. Our contract was 72 hours on shift a week. It was just 12-hour days every day. That you just didn't really take a day off. I mean, you to work, went to eat, you slept, and went to the gym. Those were about the 4 things that we did on Bagram. But yeah, crazy good times. It's funny, the things that shape your life and move it down a certain path. And for you, it was 9/11. 9/11 affected me as well to a degree. But now we're both doing some different things. And let me just say this: we go a little left turny here sometimes on the dossier. So here's a question for you. You've battled the Taliban in combat, like you said, chased terrorists across 5 continents, and you also went on news channels like CNN and Fox News. So, bullets and bombs aside, what environment did you find the most hostile? The folks here at the dossier think it's a fair question.
It is a fair question, and obviously, I mean, you know what's funny? I mean, I published a lot, and I write. I'm a thriller writer now, so a lot of fiction. The place where I got the most hate over the years was a narrative nonfiction article I wrote about a real thing. I encountered a bear when I was out on a run in the Great Dismal Swamp of North Carolina. I was doing like a joint thing with some contractors, like a training mission thing down there.
That's not just for the folks listening. JTTF is Joint Terrorism Task Force, and the Great Dismal Swamp is a real thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I was down there doing something. I was out for a run one day, and I came around a corner, and there's this massive bear. And I mean, I grew up with like black bears in New England, and they're like big dogs. But this was not one of those. This was this massive bear, And I was just stuck out there, and I remember stopping. I'm like, what am I going to do here? And so, short story, I did everything wrong. Like everything you could possibly, a city guy, everything you could possibly do wrong when confronting a bear, and I did it all. So I thought it was hilarious. So I ended up charging this thing and thinking, oh, I'm making a lot of noise and I'm flashing a light and he's gonna like take off, and I kept getting closer and closer and closer. I'm like, he's not going anywhere, And I'm like, I'm gonna have to like punch this bear, and then I've heard of punching a shark in the nose, Yeah. I'm like, literally, what are you gonna do? You can't stop and run away, So I'm like, I'm committed now. So I'm just screaming, I'm getting ready to, I'm pulling back, getting ready to punch this giant black bear, and it stood up on its hind legs, and it jumped over, and it barreled through the woods, knocking down little saplings and things. And I ran probably the fastest mile of my life after that, trying to get back. But I mean, it's like literally everything wrong. Like, do not do this at home, And then so the hate I got from that article was unbelievable. And I think it was because it was in like Trail Runner magazine or something, and they titled it something like "What to Do If You Confront a Bear" or something like that. And it was obviously what not to do, And but so it's a good question that I've been on a ton of shows, and like long form stuff, and they were all good because it's all focused on subject matter. If I got a little pushback on some of the things when I was doing more law enforcement expert, like analysis, like statistical analysis. That's what my master's was in. And when I was doing more of that, I would get a little like political pushback and stuff from people. But yeah, it was the bear story.
The bear story. Yeah, throw some Boston attitude at a bear. See how that works out. Go Terriers. Okay. Jeff, you have a lot going on with your new publisher, Severn River. And one thing about Severn River is they like content. The HAVANA Syndrome, your book that's coming out on June 17th. It's the first book in your new Nathan Burke series. You've got more in the pipeline, and they're coming fast. So since you've written other praiseworthy books and other different types of characters, how are these new books going to be different than the others?
So these are international thrillers. They're more, that's always multi-genre, subgenre within thriller. These are more of like espionage, international thriller. So they're similar. There's, political elements to a couple of them, but they're, listen, I'm libertarian. So like if my political views seep into it, I tend to criticize everyone. They're fun. They're more, if people like, international intrigue, if they like a lot of action, I think I write action well. I've been shot at many times. I've been in a bunch of, gunfights. I've had, rockets and mortars and, RPGs shot at me and the whole work. So I've been in a lot of like fighting for my life, rolling around on the ground. So, I think I write that well and authentically, and I think people can tell. Like even my first book, Furious, was about a woman who lost a child and her husband takes her across the Indian Ocean to like get her away from everything to try to bring her back. And of course, horrible things happen because it's a thriller. But even something like that, like I'd done blue water sailing, so I was able to bring some of the real stuff to it. And people read, they want to learn things when they read.
Right, and you just used a word I didn't use it earlier. Authentic. That's what you bring. And no knock against anyone who does research. I've had this conversation with Jack Stewart and other writers about research and getting out there and doing training and doing things. But you're one of those guys like Jack Stewart and Brad Taylor can really bring your experience into the story. And that's what you do. And you continue to give back to the community. You're always involved. And I wanted to bring in this topic of what you do with helping other writers and how you bring your background into it, and what I see as bringing a team energy back into the writing community. You do this wonderful thing at your literary salon, Elaine's. You mentioned you have this restaurant in, is it Old Town? Is it?
Yeah, it's Old Town Alexandria. We're 5 miles from downtown DC, like we're a block from the Potomac, and from the end of our street, I can see the Capitol. Where
that is such a great place. Tell everybody if you could just explain a little bit about what you do there and what your interviews are like.
Yeah, so it's writing has got to be one of the hardest professions. Period. Right, the rejection rates are insane. Like sometimes I'm hesitant to share the numbers when I'm talking to like new writers because you don't want to discourage them. If they don't tell a story, the story's lost forever. They're making it up out of whole cloth, and you want everyone to tell their stories. So I try to be encouraging, but also realistic, and let people know like how hard it is, how many, every agent's looking at 30 to 100 cold queries a day, and they're maybe signing a couple people a year. The numbers are like 1 in 4,000 for getting like represented by an agent, and then it's in the hundreds of thousands to get traditionally published by a publisher, right? It's really hard.
You have a better chance of being elected to Congress.
Yeah, you probably do. I mean, it's really bad. Like you hear, going to Hollywood, I'm going to be an actor, and like those are horrible odds too. But I mean, they're probably as bad, with being an author. Anyhow, Elaine's is my wife's restaurant. It's this beautiful Mediterranean place based on her family recipes from Alexandria, Egypt. So we have this Alexandria connection going on here, which is cool. But we've made it this literary salon. So I've interviewed over 100 authors since we've opened. It's in about 2 years. We do some, like this week I did 2. Last week, I think I had a couple weeks recently where I did 3 or 4 in a week, and I usually would do like a one-on-one 45-minute interview. Then we do audience questions, book signing type of thing, and that's really a lot of fun. But I also counsel authors. Like my expertise is I've made literally every mistake you could make as an author, right? So like I feel like I'm the point guy. I'm stepping on every mine. I'm like doing everything, and so I'm able to share with them like, hey, don't do these like career damaging mistakes because I've done it, and here's why you shouldn't. And honestly, it's such a solitary profession for people, and they're at home and they're writing and you're in your head a lot. And just a lot of people don't have a writing group, right? They don't have a critique group. They don't go to conferences. Like they're not exposed. So it's a great way just to like sit down with somebody for like an hour and tell them, here's sort of the landscape, and it's changed, right? Last 5 years, publishing's changed completely. Here's what the big five's looking for. Here's what independent traditional publishers are. Here's a role for hybrids. Here's what self-publishing looks like, and then kind of walking them through the process. Like, how do you find an agent? How do you write a query letter that makes you stand out? I saw a thing the other day. It was something like 80% of all queries to agents are not formatted properly.
How can that be possible? But you're right. I hear and see it all the time. Yeah.
But I see it. Like people will come in, they go, "Hey, would you mind looking at this?" Or whatever, and I'll do it for a little bit. At some point, I'll have to start charging for some of those services. Somebody sends me a manuscript, and I'll tell them. By the way, I get so many every week. I get multiple manuscript. Can you read this? Can you tell me what you think? Can you? And I just don't have time, right? So what I tell people is send me 2 pages. I used to say send me the first chapter, then it was like send me 10 pages, and it was 5 pages. Now I'm like send me 2 pages because you can literally tell what the problems are in the first 2 pages, and those are probably the most edited, the most polished of the whole manuscript. But you can see all the rookie mistakes that we all make, and I continue to make, but we all make them. So that's what an agent looks at. That's what an acquiring editor looks at. They look at those first couple pages, and then they'll skim through the manuscript just to see. But usually you don't make it out of the first couple paragraphs.
Oh, hey, this episode of the Writer's Dossier Podcast, I think we're in the teens here when this episode drops, and I think I've probably made every mistake as a podcaster and interviewer along. Even though I have 160 dossiers at thewritersdossier.com, sometimes I just ask the dumbest questions or say the stupid things. You guys are great tolerating me. I want to talk a little bit more about you, though. You were a Killer Nashville Claymore winner in 2023, right?
Yes.
Yes, and you've won... You've won other awards and you've earned accolades from the writing community. What level of importance do you put on engagement, doing local writer events and attending conferences? I know we talked about your salon, but how much has it helped you, and how much do you think it helps the people who you engage with?
It helps in a lot of ways, So I think winning awards. Listen, if you win the Booker or there's some. If you win a Pulitzer, right? There's some awards that are just so prestigious that it's life changing.
We all can't be Alana Berry, so.
Right. Yeah. She's amazing, right? She's absolutely amazing. Her writing. I interviewed her here right when her book first came out. She was on an espionage panel I did. She's terrific. But the awards help in that when a reader's looking at you, they can say, okay, here's a neutral third party who also found value in this writing. It's just like a lot of Amazon reviews is very helpful, right? If you look at somebody and you haven't read the author and you're like, this sounds interesting, but can they write? Is it good? You can look at the sample. But if you see 1,000 reviews there and it's at 4.5 stars or something, people like it. And the same thing for these ads or these awards that you can get. And Killer Nashville is a really great conference. I think especially for newer writers. I mean, it's really good. There's agents there, and I recommend that as one of the conferences. But beyond the awards, I think it's just having a network, and getting out there and meeting other writers. And it's even not you can attend all the classes on craft. I need to hear something 10 times before I internalize it. So, I always get something from every class, but it's at the bar later, or it's at getting a coffee in the morning, or standing out in the hallway and talking, and someone could go, oh, don't do that with this agent, or, that's a mistake. Don't do that. When your publisher asks for this, you better do, X, Y, and Z. Those are the conversations that really help. And you're not going to get that anywhere else, So developing a network of people. It even helps when you have a book coming out where if you need blurbs, you need people to say something nice about it. You can reach out to people and you can help them as well. Now I have this salon, so all these people I know, I invite them to come here and we can celebrate their work. So yes, it's a big deal. Writing community has dozens and dozens of benefits to it, and you really should go. I go to Thriller Fest this year. I'm going to BoucherCon in the DC area, Mid-Atlantic. It's Creatures, Crimes, and Creativity. I'll be teaching a class at the Rappahannock Writers Conference this year, Suffolk. Every region has their own local stuff, and then there are the big ones too. And I really recommend people go. It's fun too, right? It's also a good time.
I don't disagree whatsoever, and I can't wait to see you about your cons. Last question. We're going to wrap things up here for the people who get in a podcast during their commute. We appreciate you listening here. Some authors say, Jeff, to write what you know. Others hate that saying. You've supervised DEA special agents, and some of your stories reflect that part of your past, but you've written other stories too, even some poetry. So how do you approach the craft of writing, and what are your priorities as you continue to grow as an author?
That's a great question, and some bad poetry, by the way. I think to write what you know. You can learn it, right? You can research it. You can find you want to write stuff that's fairly authentic. It's fiction, right? In the end, but when you do something, when you know something, whatever it is, right? Maybe you're a great tennis player or a long distance runner or whatever the activities you bring something to it where you have experience. The internal sensations. The little stuff, the the sensory experience that maybe somebody who's reading about it online doesn't understand. So, that really matters. But also, it's you can write what you know, but you want to write what excites you, and you want to write the story you want to read. I think that's way more important. And so you can learn things, you can talk to experts, given time. Depends on what your publishing schedule looks like, but you can do all that, which is good. But write what you're excited about. That's what I would recommend. And if you really don't know about something, like, as a former law enforcement officer, I've worked in so many, from patrol all the way, right? Since I've done all that, I have writers in the local area who come to me all the time with questions, and I'm happy to answer them, because you just want them to get it right. So if you're writing about something you haven't done, just talk to somebody or do some serious research before you do it.
I love that. That's one of the best things I've heard in a long time. Write what excites you. That's wonderful. It's going to be a clip. Everybody check out Jeffrey James Higgins. Get to know him at jeffreyjameshiggins.com. Follow him on social media. He's active out there. Jeff, where do you mostly post? Where can people follow what you're doing?
I post on X and Facebook when I have events and things coming up.
Okay.
The best way to reach me is at jeffreyjameshiggins.com. Go through my website. There's a contact form, or email me, and I will get back to you eventually.
All right. Well, folks, there you go. Definitely check out his dossier. Go to his website, and if you're ever in Old Town, go to Elaine's.
Thanks so much, Jeff. This is really special. You got a great podcast here.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're still learning in the first stages here, but it helps a lot to have you on, and I really appreciate you joining us here on the Dossier Podcast.
My pleasure.
Bye, everybody. The Dossier Podcast is a production of The Idea Academy.